Well, hello, virtual world. This is Dusty with the FBI group, and I have today a guest with me, and this is a friend. We're in Kiwanis together. I've known Fran for 15, 18 years now. He is Fran Palek, and he is a local banker. So say hi, Fran.
Hi, everyone.
So Fran has a daughter. He's been very involved in youth football and cheerleading for years, and the day I've met him. But his daughter Madison is now 14, and she is going into the ninth grade. So we're all waiting to see what's going to happen with the wonderful COVID decisions that need to be made. So hopefully we'll know soon, and we're looking forward to hearing more about that. So I've asked Fran to come on today because I think there's still quite a bit of question around PPP loans. And we were talking, and honestly, I didn't know you could still apply. So I'm going to ask Fran, first of all, as a banker, did your position change a little bit when the PPP loans became a factor in the banking world?
Yeah, when they rolled that program out, all of us in the business banking world, our roles changed immensely. We went from having a portfolio of customers that we took care of to getting pulled, and our resources were used to help people throughout the country. I took applications from people in California and Illinois and New York. So all over the country, I was not only taking applications, and as we got the applications built up, I then moved into the role of underwriting the PPP applications. So during the month of April, I think most of our bankers worked 7 days a week, 10-hour days, just trying to get everything done. And there was so much uncertainty at that time that you really didn't know what was going to be next. And then they changed the rules all the time. And then you saw the press come out and talk about all the bad things that were going on. Well, they really weren't bad. It's just they never thought that that's the way it was going to happen. And so it was this huge moving wheel that just once it got started, you couldn't stop it. The nice thing I can tell everyone is that of all the customers I helped, every customer that I helped that had all the information that was needed got their PPP loan. So we had nobody left behind, even though it came in the second wave. All the customers that I dealt with received PPP funding.
Nice. So let's talk about the second wave, because I guess that's what's going on currently, right?
Yeah, the second wave, they just extended. It was supposed to end June 30th. And what's happened is Congress met and they extended the deadline to August 5th. Now, you have to be careful with that deadline because that deadline is for SBA approval. So like the bank I work for is August 3rd is our deadline to take an application because it still takes time to process and have an SBA number assigned. What you have to realize is there's that time frame where you have to get the SBA to approve it because a bank technically doesn't approve your PPP loan. The actual SBA approves it. The bank does all the work for it, but the SBA does the final assignment of a number.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about process. So first of all, what is the process, and then what documents do I need when it comes to applying for a loan?
So two different processes, and it depends on the institution that you're with or who you're dealing with. There's a manual application process, and there's a form out there, an SBA form. I think it's called 2483 is the form number. And you can go through and complete that manual application. And then some banks have gone to a digital platform where they may have a DocuSign or a digital application to go through. The digital is nice because most of the banks have refined it so that you can't mess the application up. You can answer a question wrong, but you can't leave something blank. One of the problems with the manual application is there was very little training to a consumer out there or a business owner. And that initial first week of applications where everybody was doing manual applications, there were a lot of mistakes out there. That form was cumbersome. It was a government form, so it wasn't easy to decipher. Now that it's been out there, the applications have gone through, they're a little bit easier to go through. One of the most common mistakes was people would get too quick and they would answer no to question 7 on that application, which was, are your employees U.S. citizens? Well, the previous 5 or 6 questions all answered no, so people just got into the habit of answering no. That kicked those applications out and put them into a denial phase. So we've learned as time's gone on that digital application helps because it provides alerts. So depending on your institution will depend on whether you do a manual application or a digital application.
Okay. And so what documents, I mean, what needs to be provided along with filling out the online application?
So right now, there's a requirement that you have to have proof that your business operated February 10th, 2020. So you can have your proof such as a 941 941 for the first quarter. You can have a bank statement showing that your account was open on February 10th. You'll also need your payroll information. And if you were in business for all of 2019, you need your payroll information for 2019. That's typically a 940 or a W-3. For people who are self-employed or sole members, you can also use a tax return. For instance, a sole proprietorship, line 31 of that Schedule C has your income for the year. That income is then just divided by 12 times by the 2.5%, which is the standard, and that's your number. So there's different requirements. There's the same requirement for everyone. It's just what form you use.
Okay.
But it all comes down to payroll. If you don't have payroll and you don't have income, you can't apply for the PPP loan. So anybody showing a negative number on that tax return is ineligible. Anybody that's paying people 1099 wages, they're ineligible. The people receiving the 1099 wage are eligible.
Good point. Okay. So when I am trying to decide what entity I need to go to in order to apply, should I start with my personal bank that I have a personal relationship with, or are there certain entities that are now your best route?
So what typically happens is if you have your business checking account, wherever you had your business checking account as of February 10th is probably your preferred place. Now, there are some places that decided not to take PPP applications or were not allowed to take them. What we recommend is you go to the SBA website and look for an institution that will take applications. The institution I work for was allowing people up until recently to open a checking account and then apply for a PPP loan. I believe that period ended last Thursday for us.
Okay. So I know that one of the things that we were hearing was that some of the larger banks were not being as successful as like your smaller banks. And so what people were doing were they were getting denied from their bank where they had their business account, and then they were turning to a real localized bank that's much smaller in their community and were having success. Were you finding that as you were hearing stories?
So here's a little insider information on that. What was happening is the SBA was assigning loan numbers. Some of the smaller community banks grabbed 50 loan numbers, and then they held those numbers until they got the application the way they needed it, and then assigned that number to the application. With some of the bigger institutions that were dealing with thousands and tens of thousands of applications, they didn't want to assign a number until the application was actually accepted by the SBA. So that gave some of the smaller banks were able to pick and choose which customers they wanted to do the PPP or give the assigned number to, whereas the large banks went with when it's first in, first out, when it's completed, we're going to go with the actual approval. So although it seemed like some of the smaller community banks were able to get stuff done, they were really getting them done for their better customers. And if you think about it, the big banks were also doing that with their better customers.
Right.
And everybody was getting the people they wanted to assigned, but it really wasn't anything that anybody was doing wrong, which is, I think, why Congress stepped up and extended and put more money in. And you can see as of today, there's still money available for PPP. So the money didn't run out. And as far as I know, most of the institutions out there were able to get every customer that applied properly funding for their PPP loan.
Well, that's interesting. So I do know, hey, I see quite a number of viewers out there. If you have any questions for Fran, if you want to put them in the comment section, we'll go ahead and get them answered for you. I think this is a topic and a subject, as he's already mentioned, that is just like a moving target. Especially when it first came out, it was just so unclear of the guidelines and exactly what was happening with it that they've had to learn in the process. And now we're when did they open this up? In March? or
First
April?
weekend in April. It was the first weekend in April because we worked all weekend that first initial weekend, and ever since then it's been up and running, and
Okay.
it's moved ever since and changed every day since.
Okay. And so I noticed that you said deadline. So it sounds to me like the deadlines are a little bit different depending on who you're dealing with. So for your customers, you're saying that it's August the 3rd to submit any new applications, right?
That's
Okay.
correct. Right now, I'm actually working on 2 applications as we speak. They were just people that didn't know they could apply, or they waited to the last second or thought, well, this is a good idea. So I have a couple that I'm working with now. We should, in fact, I just had one funded yesterday from a restaurant that decided to apply late. They didn't want the funding initially, and then realized when the second wave hit, they really stepped up and said, you know what, I think I need to do something for my employees because now we're starting to suffer during this second wave. So it's still out there, it's still available. But I would say if anybody is looking to do anything, don't wait. This is probably Friday. Tomorrow is probably the last day to really put an application in and be confident that you'll get funding.
Okay. And so how long is the actual processing time? Does it vary depending on the complexity?
Yeah, there's really not a lot of complexity to it. It's the same no matter how big your business is, as long as you have the right documentation. I'm able to get people approved within. I take an application today. By tomorrow, they're probably approved. By the next day, they have their funding. So, it's as
Oh,
little
wow.
as 3 days to get funding. It's extremely quick. Now, if you don't submit all the information properly, or you don't have the right forms completed totally, it will take longer. But to give you the example, the restaurant that I just referenced, I took their application on Monday, and yesterday they were funded.
So it's automatically deposited into the account then?
Correct. And that's one of the things that when PPP rolled out, they all wanted you to go to the institution where you had your account. It was easier to be able to make the deposit. But wherever the account is the deposit that goes in. That was also true of the EIDL loans that the SBA did.
Okay. So I have a question for you. I want to just kind of step back just for a minute. It was something that you mentioned. So 1099 employees are eligible, but
Correct.
employers, I'm sorry.
No, you're correct.
Okay.
1099 employees are eligible.
Okay. And the employer who has 1099 employees is not eligible unless he has other staff members.
Unless he has other W-2 employees, or if the company itself is a 1099 receiver.
Okay. Okay. And then what about these individuals that like fall into like hair, nails, massage? Are those individuals that would qualify?
Well, hopefully they've set up a sole proprietorship, and any individual can be a sole proprietor using their tax ID number themselves, and are eligible
Okay.
for PPP funding. The issue is they have to have a Schedule C that shows income. And what I
Okay.
found is a lot of these folks will have $300 in income on that Schedule C. Well, you don't qualify for anything because you didn't declare any income. As long as
Gotcha.
that schedule shows income, you can go ahead and use that as funding. Now there is a cap, and it's 100,000 annually for income. So
Okay.
if you're making 150 on that Schedule C, you can't claim 150,000 for one employee. You can only claim up to 100,000.
Okay. And then what is the formula, Fran? So I heard you say times 2.5. What is the formula?
So let's just say we'll use a round number. Let's say your income on a Schedule C is 12,000 annually. That shows $1,000 a month as payroll. You take
Okay.
that number times 2.5% or 2.5, you'll get your $2,500, which would be what you would apply for. On a Schedule C with 100,000 or more, you're roughly looking at a $20,000 2.5 times, because you're at about 83 a month. Times that by your 2.5 or 2.5, and you'll end up at 20,000. And that's kind of the maximum. Now, you can go over that number because not only can you include the payroll, but you can also include the benefits and any cost for providing that payroll into that number.
Okay. And then that's the same formula that you use if you have W-2 employees. So it's 2.5 times your payroll.
2.5 times your monthly payroll. That's correct.
Okay. And for how long? So how long? It's two and a
It's
half.
for 2019. If the business
Okay.
wasn't open in 2019 or is seasonal, there are some other measurements you can use. Typically, it's the first quarter of 2020 that they use to determine what payroll is for a company that started sometime in 2019 or early in 2020.
Okay. And it's an 8-week time frame is what I'm trying to get, or is it?
Oh, well, that's
a
actually
year?
changed. Yeah,
Okay.
that's one of the things that changed. That goes into the forgiveness aspect.
Okay.
You have 8
And the
weeks in which
subject,
to
so
spend
good.
the money. Yeah, or 24 weeks now to spend the money on that
Okay.
for the forgiveness piece.
Okay. So let's talk forgiveness. All right. So talk to me about what parameters that you're aware of that are on the forgiveness piece of this application.
The biggest thing about forgiveness is record keeping. And that's what I told all my customers. Keep good records. You don't necessarily need to have a separate account for the PPP funds, but you need to have records of what you did with the money. Now, you don't have to have forgiveness. You can use the money for other things other than payroll, but at least 60% of it has to go towards payroll. Now, that's down from 75% when the program first rolled out.
Okay.
Keep in mind that the other 40% can be used for things like rent, mortgage interest on a commercial building, utilities as far as electric, water, but only 40% of the money can go towards that.
Okay. So 60% goes to payroll, 40% can go to your rent, mortgage, utilities.
Mortgage interest, just to clarify, mortgage interest.
Okay, mortgage interest. So what, when it comes to how are they documenting? You're saying it's all about records. What records are going to be needed in order to get the forgiveness? And then how long is the forgiveness period now? Is that the 24 weeks?
Yeah, that's either you have two tests. You have an 8-week test or a 24-week test. And as long as you got your money prior to the change, you can use either. If you got it after the change, it's only a 24-week test. And I believe that comes out when the extension happened. I'm assuming sometime after June. Off the top of my head, I'd have to look at it. I'm not positive.
Okay.
But there is a coverage period that starts that you can only use the 24 weeks. So anybody taking a loan out now would have the 24-week test rather than the 8-week test.
And what is the test?
So the test is, what did I spend my money on? The documentation. Okay. So if you have a payroll company, that test is fairly easy. You can just get the payroll report from an ADP or any of the other companies that process payroll. And then you would need to show how you paid your electric bill, how you paid your mortgage interest. You'd have to have good records for that. That's why I said record keeping is the key. Now, there's talk about an automatic forgiveness for smaller companies. That hasn't been approved yet, but that's something that, because of the sheer volume of companies that are out there, you may see that roll out where it's an automatic forgiveness for a certain dollar amount.
Okay. All right. Is there anything at this point in time? So we talked a little bit about forgiveness. Sounds like early part was 8 weeks of forgiveness, right? The payroll needs to be at least 60% of that money that you are using in order to be forgiven. The other categories that are acceptable are your rent, mortgage interest, and utilities. And now it looks like we can do a 24-week forgiveness, correct?
Yeah, and just one thing to throw in there too. Although you have payroll, you have to also maintain your employees. You can't use stuff and reduce your workforce. There could be a forgiveness problem if you reduce your workforce, unless it's for cause. So you want to be careful of that. If you had 3 employees going in during that covered period, you want to have 3 employees coming out.
Good point.
If you involuntarily, like if somebody resigns or they're fired for cause, that's different. But if you just lay them off and they go on unemployment, that's where the forgiveness piece may not come into play.
Yep, gotcha. So the idea behind the whole payroll program was to make sure you didn't do the layoffs, that you didn't burden state with it. So yeah, I could see where that would be a problem. Okay, so anything else that we should make sure that the audience knows?
Well, I think that's good. I would encourage anybody that hasn't done it yet, if you do have a business and you do have payroll, look into it. Even the ones that say, "Well, I don't think I need it. I have savings, or I'm okay with my operations." That's fine, but if it's there, take advantage of it.
Yeah.
It's a way to pay people, because this wasn't supposed to happen. We've put people or businesses in a bad position. Now, for those of you who are lucky and didn't need to do this, that's great. But for those of you who are even on the border, I would encourage you to go out today or tomorrow and get an application in, and at least attempt to get the PPP funding.
I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like this is, I don't care. Even if you were able to continue your operation, you saw a decrease in the amount of business that you actually transacted. So I do believe that this is something that is put out there to help small businesses to be able to keep their employees, one, but also to make sure that the operating capital that they have coming in is doing just that. It's being used for operating capital and whatever they need. So if you don't have a good banker and you need some help, Fran's information is streaming across the bottom of the presentation, and he'd be more than happy to help you out with that. And PPP, right? You've got to at least explore the options if you haven't yet. So that's my tip to you today. Thanks, Fran, for being my guest. Tell everybody in PA we said hi.
I will. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.